I take pride in doing introductions because I feel like it's a way of showing gratitude, and I feel so much gratitude when I'm in this space for the people who come and for the people who generously give of their time. But tonight's guest has done so much that I had to print out some of these details just to make sure I hit a few of them. And he and I decided I should just say, this is Bob, and you'll get a sense of him from our conversation. But I do want to call your attention a little bit to some of the things about this man and why we're excited to have a conversation tonight about songwriting and production, the relationship of the song from its inception and conception all the way to that thing that comes back at us through the speakers. But Bob Cutarella had a lifelong dream to be in music, and one of the things I'm going to ask him about is how that came to pass. But this is kind of fun to be a recent Grammy winner as a producer, and as a producer or publisher to have been a part of more than 160 platinum records. He is a session player as well as being involved on the creative side, and then as a keen understanding of how to match artist and repertoire. He was responsible for getting essential songs to artists like, I don't know, Chaka Khan, Michael Jackson, Sheena Easton, Whitney Houston, Diana Ross, Dolly Parton, The Police, Elton John, R.E.M., Culture Club, Human League, ABC, Linda Ronstadt, Frank Sinatra. And I only read like about a fifth of the list that I could have read to. And so his experience both as a creative and on the publishing end of things, and in his experience working in the development of artists who have become some of the icons, and now in his work as a producer with emerging artists, he really has a handle on that relationship between the song and the production and the artist. And so we're just going to have a good conversation tonight. So rather than having him prepare any kind of a speech, he and I are going to talk. I have a bunch of questions, and I bet you're going to have questions. And so after we've talked for a bit, if you have a question, put a hand up. We'll do our very best to get to as many of them as we can. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention that if tonight's conversation is one you want to continue, Bob is one of the masters leading the Masters Workshop, which is a song feedback room that we do this summer on Tuesday nights. And so if that's something you want to learn more about, we can talk about your candidacy and whether that's a good fit for you and you're a good fit for that room. The goal of that room in giving and getting feedback is to be a benefit to you and for you to be a benefit to the other people in the room. I know there are a few alums of that room and alums of other workshops in here, so you know how valuable that process can be. Who's tired of me? Who's ready for our guest? Okay, very good. So if we can give him a warm enough welcome, he'll know it's for him and he'll know to come in. So please welcome Grammy-winning producer Bob Cutarella. It's a crowded room, that's good, right? So let's make sure, let me pull this mic to you so that everybody can hear you okay. And stuff. All right.
Setting myself up over here.
Yeah, get it.
See some of the people.
Tools and toys. So one of the things that I love about your bio is it begins on your website with the fact that you had a dream to have a life in music as a young man. And while we're going to get to all the particulars that relate to the work that everybody is doing right now in their art, I'm always interested in the journey from the little chair beside your bed at home where you first picked up the drumsticks to a chair here where you're talking to people about a life in music. So how did that art go? How did you know that that was the thing, and how did you ultimately track that path to wind up?
It's interesting because I didn't have the chair by the bed.
Okay.
Sorry.
On the bed.
No, it's just the bed. I think I was 9 years old. I was telling this story the other day. That you know who Paul Williams is?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So Paul Williams, I had lunch with him and John Tita, who works for him at ASCAP, and we were just having a conversation about kind of how we got started and things that really affected us and really impacted us. And I went to see Gene Krupa. Now, how many people know Gene Krupa? Can you raise your hands because then I can see Gene Krupa? Okay, Gene Krupa is a drummer who I would equate to, I don't even know who, Tommy Lee, you know, today. I'm trying to give you today's equivalent. But Gene Krupa was this cool-looking guy, you know, pompadour, he had great sharkskin suit on, that kind of thing. And he was known for playing Topsy and other songs of the era. I didn't know any of these songs, but I heard them growing up in my house. My father always had music on. So somehow we got invited to go to the Metropole in New York, which was a nightclub. And I'm a 9-year-old, and I'm excited about this. And they put me right next to him. I wasn't even supposed to be in the club, but my friend's father was a policeman. So he gets me in the club, right? My friend is playing the sax, and his father's dream for both of us was to have a big band.
Nice.
So it was like, okay, they're gonna have a big band, and it's gonna be great, right? So they put me next to Gene Krupa. And here's this guy, he's sweating like profusely, but he's ever so cool. The sharkskin suit's got no marks on it or anything. He's got a little loose tie, and hair's never out of place. One hair just falls, you know. I'm thinking to myself, what a cool gig this guy's got, right? And the audience, you know, the husbands and wives, right? And the wives are like, oh, Gene Krupa, you know, and I'm sitting there going, this has got to be a great gig for a kid, you know. I was this hunched over kid, and it's like, I'm just waiting for something to come along. So that was like really the beginning of it. I went home, and my aunt, I grew up in an Italian family who had a lot of, what do you call them, wooden spoons. First, they were all cooking all the time, right? So I grabbed 2 of those, a box, and went downstairs, and at that time I had a portable record player we had, which they're now selling at Urban Outfitters. But that was a portable record player, so things come around a lot. So I had this portable record player in the 45s, and just started banging to them, you know? And I'm sure the neighbors were really discouraged for a long time, because I would bang loudly, very loudly, and living in a neighborhood very close to other people.
Right.
So that where it really began. That was the genesis. Okay, so I think that that's the starting point. But what happened was, every night we had transistor radios. Anybody know what that is?
Yeah.
Okay. So I only have one ear plug, so it went in one ear, and at night I would put the pillow over my head, transistor radio on, and listen to the disc jockeys. The disc jockeys really spoke to you, and you know, they told you all this information about the artist. They got you excited about it. There was new, fresh terminology. It was really cool. So every night I would be listening, then I'd go downstairs, I'd buy the next 45 and start playing. And it was the passion that really drove me. The passion never leaves you if you're really inspired by something. And music, I think, chooses people. I don't think you choose music. I don't think it's kind of a strange thing. And maybe it's that way with art, maybe it's that way with dance, because I see dancers so crazed, you know, like they're just doing this when they're walking down the street, and it's fantastic, you know? I mean, it may look odd, but it's passion. It's all what we do in music is really about passion, you know.
How has being a drummer affected the way you hear and perceive other people's music, and ultimately, you know, we're going to get to the conversation about matching the song to the artist and that sort of thing, but that's a different kind of lens than the singer always thinking about melody, or the guitar player thinking about chords. How has being a drummer shaped the way you listen?
Rhythm.
Yeah.
When you build a house, you need a foundation first, and what I learned from, I had mentors that I was very fortunate to have. George Martin, who produced the Beatles, let me sit in with sessions when I knew nothing about the business. Arif Mardin, who produced everybody from Aretha Franklin to Hall & Oates to Shaka Khan and on. And these people that allowed me to sit in and see what production was. And that's when I realized what the drums meant, because when you play on the stage when you're young and everything else, it's just fun. And there's an audience, people clap, it's the adulation, you're sitting there going, that's great, And then you walk down the street in your neighborhood, there's only 50 people in your neighborhood, and everybody knows he's the drummer, And that's good and bad. Trust me, when I first started playing, it was very bad, But it helped me understand the relationship between bass and drums as a foundation for everything musically when you're crafting a record, because really they're the foundation, and a great written song, if your bass and drum sound off, you don't really get to hear how great that song is, or any record that you hear, it's rhythm.
You're talking about being a fly on the wall. What was the first opportunity that felt to you like you're really in this business of music? Like you'd obviously been making music for a while. What was the first thing where you felt like, oh, this could be my life in music?
It may sound odd, but playing drums with some of the heroes of when I was a kid. So we grew up with a lot of doo-wop music in the 50s. And I used to go to these shows with my father. Every year there was a show, a Mary Kay show, and I used just to look at the guys on the stage and say, that's me one day. And then the Shirelles, they asked me to play drums for them one day. Somebody heard me who knew the Shirelles asked me to play drums. So I said, sure, great. And went home that night and butterflies in the stomach before and after. And I just said, wow, this is pretty cool. It was a stadium. It was a nice show. It was like 5. It was Dion the Belmonts. I got to back them up. The Shirelles, the Crystals, and all these bands that I had just seen on the Fox stage, you know. So it gave me an indication that I could do it. So I thought that was probably a good starting point, you know. Right? I would say that's a starting point.
It's a pretty good starting point.
You know what? Nobody's ever asked me that.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, people ask me questions about, you know, how did you get into business and all that stuff, but saying it now out loud, it made me realize that was the start.
Well, when you're in a room of creators, sometimes it gets you closer to that source as opposed to my first break was, you know. So that's really great.
Good question.
So what about, and feel free to circle back, like we're just skipping, I read that list of amazing people that he's been involved with, so I'm hoping that some stories will come in as is appropriate. But I'd love to talk a little bit about your understanding of what production really is. You literally were sitting over the shoulder of some of the masters and architects of pre-modern and modern music, and so what does production mean to you?
Well, the thing that I got most from all of them was this mutual respect between producer and the artist. The second thing was the way they communicated with the artist to really get the artist's vision. Because in anything you do as a producer, some producers have a sound that's their sound, and they're actually called on for their sound. I don't have a sound. I didn't think Arif Martin had a sound. I didn't think George Martin had a sound. And when I got into the business, they were arrangers. A lot of these people, everything that you hear on all your, all your gear that you have today, a lot of that is copied from these guys arranged, and just it took a lot of effort to watch them arrange something, hear it in their head beforehand, and then have somebody execute it. And when the vision was aligned between the artist and the producer, the result was obvious, and it ended up on the radio then. In many instances, not every instance, but we had very few choices then. Today they told me that there are 2 million songs being uploaded a day on the internet. When I got into the business, there were 400 albums globally released a year.
Wow.
So choice was, we had limited choice, and we waited for a record to come out. So, but the producer and an artist, they're a marriage, of sorts. When you're the artist, you have to explain the vision you have in your head if you can't convey it. And you have to convey it to musicians a lot of times, unless you're Prince, And, or Stevie Wonder, or another one that we bow to. But I think that it's this marriage and this respect and this understanding of how to pull out of the artist. That's the other important part, is really, you work with an artist because you believe in the artist. So if you believe in their talent, you understand who they are, and you have to figure out on many levels, emotional levels, psychological levels, how you're going to pull that out of the artist and get the most out of the artist. And that's the challenge, because we're humans, and we every day we shift a little bit, and you might have a different response to something, and we might be going through a trauma. Or I remember early sessions, and I thought this was a cool thing. Later on, I didn't think it was such a cool thing. But people had told me, you gotta get the most out of the artist, and gut-wrenching, and then you'll get a performance. And yeah, sometimes you get a performance, but sometimes if they're going through a hard time and you get that performance out of them, what's the cost emotionally? Sometimes the artist will be drained. So it's a delicate balance.
Your producer resume includes some names that emerging artists some of you might have heard of: Eric Clapton, Joss Stone, Sting, Stinge. Is it Stinge? No.
Stinge.
Yeah. And so, would you talk a little bit about the process of, I feel like we're going to double back a lot to the idea of bringing out the essence of someone. But what about someone who really has put a lot of energy into kind of defining their essence? What is your role in those kinds of rooms?
Capture. Capture the essence of the artist. You know, you have to know as a producer, and you learn as you go along, I think, and some learn early, some learn later, that if something is great, you leave it alone. Greatness appears, you recognize greatness, you're fortunate enough to work with it, capture it. That's really what you have to do. When something needs a little bit of a, boost here and there. And so I worked with Joss Stone for the first time when she was like 17 years old. And she was very sweet, very naive, but she still had those pipes, and she just won Grammys and all. And she had a boyfriend then. We just got into all these conversations about the boyfriend. And she liked lollipops, so at lunch we bought her lollipops and ice cream. I mean, stuff like this. And that made her feel comfortable, so we had a comfort level there. And I knew that all I had to do was capture her voice, but nobody told me she had polyps. So when you're singing with polyps, you're destroying your voice. You have to learn. Great vocalists will tell you there are exercises you can do, things you can do to really maintain your voice over time and even strengthen it. So Joss came in with polyps, and about an hour in, I'm hearing the double hiss come out of the throat, which happens with polyps. Where it's almost like a Sufi throat singer. It's like two voices coming out at the same time. So I had to stop and say, you know what, I think we should do this another day, because I think you should rest your throat before we finish the session. And everybody's different. They're all so different. You can have 100 different artists, and you sit and say, well, it's the same genre. No. Joe Bonamassa plays guitar differently than Eric Clapton. They want a different feeling in the room. They want to be surrounded with different musicians. They're all different. So you have to treat each person as an individual, which we do in life anyway, but it's just an extension of our daily lives, really.
In contrast, when you're working with an emerging artist, you've worked with some members of our community. We're talking about Malad before.
Yeah.
What are you looking for? Like, maybe they haven't figured out exactly who they are. What are you looking for? What gets you excited first to work with someone, and second, again, I know we can't generalize, but what kinds of things are you looking for in an artist?
Well, first I want to know that they're passionate about it, because if I'm going to give 150%, I expect the same, and I expect more, actually. Well, so Malo is a good example. So she had a great voice, and Chaz was a good songwriter, and they had a good chemistry together. So when you watched the chemistry, you saw something could be magically happening, So their songwriting became the magic, and her voice, and I thought they had great dialogue between the both of them, and in the studio as well. It was a very easy rapport in the studio. But they wanted something a little different here and there. So the challenge was to take traditional songwriting and try to make it different here and there. We ended up going back. What's an interesting thing with Malo was we ended up going back in the vault a lot, because their influences were entirely different. Two people. And a vocalist whose influences could range from Whitney Houston to whoever, and then you have a guitarist who's straight out of London, and his influences are more edgier and stuff like that. So that became a challenge. So we tried to compromise, I think, in what we did, and I think we achieved the compromise. But that took a little pulling, a little tweaking here and there along the way, and revisiting and tweaking, and that's where you have to be open, both from an artist angle and from my angle, to being open to change. I've watched producers lock in and go, that's it, finished, Really? You're not going to have a happy artist here. I think you have to really think about that and bend a little bit. So.
I want to change gears. I have a few more questions, and then I know some of you will have some questions as we look at our current class count. One question. I want to talk a little bit about your role as a publisher. And of course, there's the business of publishing, and then there are the creative aspects that relate to the business, where you are looking for the kind of song that brings out something in an artist, whether it's their next step or something about them we haven't heard or going deeper in a direction we've heard. I'd love it if you talk a little bit about some of that work and if any stories come to mind that help illustrate the challenges and the creative opportunities there.
Sure, but I'm not look at the courses. I'm just thinking of signing up. Okay. So one thing that kind of alerted me to whatever skill sets I possess was I knew nothing about publishing. For those who know nothing about publishing, you have the internet. You can do a lot of reading today. I gave away my first song because somebody handed me a contract. We didn't have a lawyer, and blah blah blah. And it ended up on a TV commercial for like 3 months, which was a lot of income I gave away. And still did not sit and say to myself, publishing, I gotta learn about publishing, because it was drilled into me to be an artist. And even though I was songwriting and performing was the thing. And but I was fortunate enough to have the Beatles had an office in ATV Music in New York, and there was a man named Jerry Simon who just took a liking to me, and Jerry said, why don't you share this office with us, come up whenever you want, and we'll talk about publishing a little bit. And so they started really alerting me to the fact that publishing was where the money was, number one. To me it wasn't sexy, but today publishing is really sexy, because today you're a publisher, you can be a producer, you can be anything today. You can be the artist, you can be all of it. And in those days, if you're a publisher, you're a publisher. And if you're a publisher, you serviced a songwriter, serviced an artist, and that was it. So I didn't have much interest in that. So publishers' function during those times were you have to match up an artist with a song. And so the first job I got was at Chapel Music, which is now Warner Chappell, which is a very large company. Then it was owned by Polygram, and it was founded in 1860. We had tremendous writers sign there, and I got 3 job offers the same day. I had nothing for years. All of a sudden I got 3 publishing offers the same day. And I went in, and my boss had already hired somebody. And he said to me, I hired somebody, but people said you have a decent year, so I had to have this meeting with you, right? So he plays me a song, and it was kind of like a little test, and he said to me, who do you think would cut this? And I don't remember, I think it was Anne Murray. I said, Anne Murray. You probably don't remember Anne Murray, but she had a big career. So I said, Anne Murray. He throws the cassette at me. We have cassettes then, which are coming back too, right? Everything's coming back again. So I'm going to be in style. I know it. It's going to come right back. So he throws a cassette at me, and this went on 5 times. One of them was Whitney Houston, one was another one. And so I went home, and he hired me, and he said to me, the reason why I hired you was because it's not very common that somebody can match songs up that quickly with an artist. And so when he said that to me, I learned, as a publisher, that was going to be one thing I could focus on right away, because obviously I had that gift. But I didn't understand all the particulars about publishing, and he just said to me, no, just concentrate on this, and you'll do well. But we're normal. I think if you're driven, you want to do a lot of different things. So the publishing is really important to understand your ownership of songs, to understand what your performance rights societies do for you, and how they interact with you now. Because right now, your performance rights societies can put you into camps with other writers, can help you with meet your future, if you're an artist, future producers. And I think publishing is still one of the few areas that has not decreased in income. Even though we don't have a physical sale anymore, we have so many new technology plays that incorporate music. Between the streaming money, and this streaming money is not great yet, but it'll increase. I think publishing is a great area to be in, and everybody should study how to publishing if you're a songwriter, because your songs are your asset and your future, and you should understand what that means to you.
I want to go back, if I could, to that era of yours. So what helps you have the vision, this song and that artist? Because it can't be what we just heard them do. It's like leading them up strides as opposed to hitting them where they are. So what are you hearing? What are you looking for when you make that kind of match?
Connection?
Are you like Kreskin or something?
Yes. say I'm bringing Whitney Houston. No, I think because I was a musician, because I was always singing, couldn't shut up, still don't shut up. Ask my girlfriend, she'll tell you. What happens is you familiarize yourself with the tonality of a song, the lyrical aspect of a song, where it peaks, where it doesn't peak, and then you start to understand voices and who can sing a certain song a certain way, and so you're matching your, as an artist performing. We were doing a lot of covers for a while, and for years just played everybody's song. We started instinctively knowing, well, this would be good for this one. Sometimes people hand me songs now and they go, this would be a great song for blah blah blah, and it's so off, you know. And I just think to myself, okay, I probably said that a million times, and somebody said to me, oh, it's so off, but it's a skill, I think, in some ways, that you just keep, you practice it in your head, you hear it in your head. I don't know if you practice it, you hear it. And so what do I look for? If I have a female artist with a big voice, and she's got 5-octave range, and she likes to sing big ballads, most likely I'm going to look for a big ballad for her that works, that has enough of that dynamic in it. We don't have a lot of that today. So today, and this may lead you into another discussion somewhere, today we don't show off vocals so much. Today is producer's paradise. It's been that way for a while now. You know, we're stripping away. When I started listening to Spotify, every week I listen to my Spotify top 50 in US and globally, and we strip away a lot. All the productions are really stripped away. So today I understand that the producers write with the artists a lot for a reason. You know, they've kind of all become locked in one unit. When I got in it, it wasn't like that. They were looking for a song for Whitney Houston, and I became that guy. You know, the big ballad guy, corny, the Barry Manilow, tear in the eye kind of ballad. They sold billions of records, so it's a good thing. It wasn't a bad thing. Today you look for something different.
When you listen to a song now, is there a first thing that hits you? You know, some people like hear the lyrics, some people dial in the melody itself, some people are immediately feeling the track. Got some fine producers in the front row. What do you hear first? You're a drummer, but you're aware of that kind of timbral thing.
So I've got to go back. From a timbral perspective, I used to hear the melody first. But today, because we're stripping so many things away, and it's not so much melody in a lot of it, it's almost like we talk. So much rap is incorporated, and that has a tonality and a timbre to it for sure, but it's a different feeling. So I think rhythm hits me quickly, but now it's gotten to the point where it's difficult for me to separate, because I listen to music as one totality and I deconstruct. So it's difficult for me to listen to music for pleasure. I used to just love to listen to one song over and over and over and over for pleasure. And there's still some that are in that category, but now I'm deconstructing all the time, especially because as I got older in the business and the business got younger, I don't want to be a foregone conclusion. I want to be the guy that they still call, you know, so that's important. So I want to understand what the young artist is really relating to, because most of the millennials all grew up with buds in their ears. They heard rhythm first because hip-hop's kind of become what rock and roll was to my generation. And we're in it, this is a little digression, but it's interesting to know, just a tidbit. Quincy Jones sat down and explained to my business partner and myself, from 1950 to now, every 6 years radio has shifted from, there would be 6 years where rhythmic music would dominate, and then 6 years where more guitar-oriented and rock-oriented would dominate. We're in a 7-year period. And a lot of people say, well, why is that? And I think because rock and roll is not the same to the generation. I think hip-hop, the sound of hip-hop and the feel of hip-hop has become the new rock and roll. So we've got a lot of rhythmic music going on now. We're more of an urban-based for radio, for Spotify, for all the platforms that you need to be on. So I hear a totality is the answer. And I gave you a long answer to a short answer. I hear a totality.
I know there's some questions in the room, and I know there's a few more things that you wanted to talk about. But does anybody have a question right now that feels burning, relevant? Whether it's about production, the relationship between the song and the production, that sort of thing.
Well, I'm just curious, what are the songs that you listen to for pleasure now that just go on repeat?
Okay, so in the new sector, I listen to Charlie Puth, and I listened to him because I was going to play something for you guys here. Just
I'm gonna get out of the way in case you do that then.
we don't have to play it, but the feeling. Charlie's a great player, and I didn't know that until I watched. I kept looking at videos, and there was a video of him on the Tonight Show playing Attention, and he plays piano like Herbie Hancock, and playing with the Roots. That was like staggering to me. So I like the construction of some of his songs. I like the feeling of his voice. He has another track with Boyz II Men that's just killer, just vocal, a cappella thing. I'll still listen to Steely Dan. I'll still listen to Stevie Wonder, Joni Mitchell. I mean, I'll be all over the map with this. 1 minute it's David Bowie, and then the next minute it might be Dua Lipa. I mean, it's kind of a funny thing, but I have to listen to everything new. And everything old I'm familiar with, but it still gets me off, It's kind of listening to Earth, Wind, and Fire. Earth, Wind, and Fire, we don't have anything like Earth, Wind, and Fire today. It's just there's so much rhythm and feeling, and I guess I'm attracted mostly to things that have a passion and a feeling to them. So it could be anything. It could be Brazilian, it could be pop music, it could really be anything.
Thank you.
Yeah, welcome.
Did you want to play the Charlie Puth stuff, or?
Are you guys familiar with the song Attention? Yeah. So no. Okay. So yeah. Why don't we play it? And then I'll talk about it afterwards, or point out things as well. So that's got a typical structure. Very like today we don't have typical structures necessarily. Sometimes you have an A, B, C, D, E section, a lot of oohs and la-la-las and whatever else that sounds good, we incorporate, and it's a little different. This song is a little more traditional, but breaking it down the way he did in the production, I think makes it move and keeps it interesting all the way through, especially since he's saying the same words in the B section. They're clever, but it's the same lyric 3 times in the B section, which, it works for him. The reason why I was going to play the live one was just to see him as a player, because it adds a dimension to an artist, especially from a live show perspective, that I don't see a lot of it with a lot of different people. I know that Adam Levine plays a wicked guitar, but you don't hear that in any of the Maroon 5. So we've changed a little bit about musically. We've changed stylistically the music, but we've also eliminated some of the musicality. The solos are gone, all that stuff that players play, that's all gone. And now we just seem to focus on, can we get the structure right and the sound okay to pump it out for radio. The odd part about radio is, or even Spotify, only 200 songs break a year in radio. That's it. And if you got 200 songs that break a year through radio, and radio is still selling music, even though radio stations have problems, because Spotify is really taking the game over. 200 songs is not a lot when you release 2 million songs a day. It's not, So, to me, it would be really interesting to see more people doing what he does live. I'd be engaged, since everybody's going to live shows and that's where you're making your money. That's where I would still like to hear on radio. I'd still like to hear once in a while something a little different, that's really challenging musically. Do you want to play the live one? So, it's fun to see a young guy like that, any young musician who can play.
And it's really hard to switch from chest voice to falsetto the way that he does.
Yeah.
You could even tell when he was going for it, he was just like, okay, I'm about to switch.
No,
That's very talented.
Yeah, he's got, he's got the chops,
Yeah.
I think he's the real deal.
Mhm.
And we have a bunch of artists who are the real deal out there. It's just, it's how the industry approaches the marketing of artists, and in some ways doesn't allow some of the real talent to surface the way it could, where we could really appreciate a little bit more like that. I would think now I'd want to see a show, just to see if he plays more in the show, if the band's hot, because to me that's kind of what I miss. A couple of years ago, I made friends with Hosier. You remember Hosier? Had that hit "Take Me to Church" as a little different kind of record. This live show was staggering. The guy is an amazing guitarist. You don't hear any of that on the album at all. And now it's been 3 years, and I think it's difficult for a guy like him to match what he had before to come out with something as unique as that, because it kind of wasn't a typical radio record. Every once in a while, something like that breaks through. But when I listen to Spotify, I don't feel there's enough music challenging. And I just found out Spotify, I had a meeting with some of the top brass, and $25,000 to get a Spotify playlisting, and they're becoming a label now. And they don't tell you what playlist you're gonna end up on, how long you're gonna end up on it. But now they're becoming a label, and they're gonna be competing with, a CD Baby and whoever else is out there. That's gonna be very interesting to see what they do, because they're gonna have to pick X amount of artists that they're gonna break. They have a publishing company now, they have somebody in charge of the songs and all. It's a very unique time. We're in a very interesting time, transitional time in music, because as an industry, we haven't defined ourselves. We lost the record industry, but we have a huge music industry that's consuming more music than ever and creating more music than ever. So we just lost gatekeepers. So, questions? I can't see it.
I have a question.
Sure.
Is it important to because I'm an artist and I'm also a songwriter, is it important to distinguish yourself when you introduce yourself to people as an artist or as a songwriter, or is it okay to merge the two? Because I've had a friend that their opinion was, if you're going to introduce yourself to someone and you want to work on a project and not be like the face or the front person, you should introduce yourself as a songwriter. I mean, I think nowadays it doesn't really matter.
Semantics. I mean,
Right.
I'm a singer-songwriter, or I'm a songwriter artist, and
Right.
it's fine. You're just defining what you are, and you're not necessarily saying, I don't want to be included in songwriting with other people and all, because everything I do is for me, unless you qualify that statement,
Right.
So, somebody asked me that question yesterday, interestingly enough, and it came around to the fact that this woman that asked me the question later just kept saying, I've been born to sing ever since I was young. And what it really hit to me was, if you've been born to sing since you're young, well, then sing. She says, but I love writing. Then write. Write the songs that you write. Sing the songs that you write. You can do it all, Today, it's the Wild West in a way, and it's good in many ways, The gatekeeper thing, that's the big puzzle to me, because having the internet level the playing ground has given you guys so much choice that I don't know how you choose and pick sometimes. I really don't. I know I have a difficult time choosing and picking what I want to listen to. You have limited time in your life and limited time to really listen. So where do you go? What stands out?
Depends on the mood of it.
Okay, well, that's good. So if you're in you don't mind me asking a question. If you're in a happy mood, what do you play?
If I'm in a happy mood, if I'm I'm gonna go to the club and I know I'm about to meet up a lot of people, I love Drake. I like Halsey. I think she's really, really just
Two very different artists.
Two different. I know, right?
Yeah.
It just depends on where I'm going. But if I'm in a happy mood, those two seem to stick out to me.
Okay, give me a sad mood. Somebody give me a sad mood. What do we got for sad mood? Sade?
Yeah.
But it's still, hers is, even though it's sad, she has happy songs too. I think so. It just depends on the mood you're in.
Hers is more relaxing, I think. So you want to relax, you play
Chill.
side.
Right? It's
Yeah.
chill.
Anybody else in the back? Yeah.
So, I guess the old model of songwriting, you had like a melody guy and a lyric guy, maybe like Carole King, Jerry Goffin, maybe, and then they pitch a song to somebody, and the artist would record it. But as you were mentioning, now it's sort of producer driven, right?
Mm-hmm.
So on a day-to-day basis, how does that work? And how does it, from the publishing side, but how does it work? If you're a publisher, you're trying to pitch a song, but really the producer is driving it, and he's maybe sending out his backing track, and he's having like 20 people audition basically for top line. Like, how does that work on a day-to-day basis?
In a way, you just said it. The publishers function with a writer like that. Take a camp, for example, like Max Martin's camp, right? Max gets the calls always directly from the labels anyway because of who he is, but he might have X amount of guys, and they're given directives, and they're all signed to a publishing company, and the directives are, we need this for Rihanna, we need something for Selena Gomez, we need this for this one for that one, and then Max comes up with the melodies and all, but you ask the function of the publisher. Publisher's function at that point is to give him as many directives as possible. He's looking for who, and that's with almost any of their writers. And the publishers get a list of who's looking. They compile a list every week, and usually every month, but these days it could be even every week. And they're just disseminating that info to their writers and to their producers and saying, hey, try to write one, and we'll pitch it, that kind of thing. Guys like Max don't have to be pitched, or Dr. Luke, until this mess that he got into. But they didn't have to be pitched, they already had the gigs. And then they just compiled teams under them. That's something that's changed, now they have teams of people under them, increasing their shot of dominating. I mean, we have 8 or 10 writers who would dominate all the time, who are really the ones getting in there, making the most headway. So it's a little challenging today. Challenging for a publisher, that's for sure. But the publishers are pitching their back catalogs and other songs that they have for film and TV placements. And it's a very crowded market, but it's an additional income, it's a story to tell for the writer, and there's nothing negative about it. It's all positive.
It's where the biggest money is coming from.
Pardon?
In publishing, it's where the biggest money is coming from at this point.
Well, they started shifting half of their staff to people pitching.
I know.
Well, and they had to, you lose all that income from record sales, and you're not sharing like a 360 deal shares in the live performance. What are you going to do? You're not going to die and let it, they'll find use of it. They'll find toilet paper with the lyrics written on it. I mean, I've seen it before, It's another way to make money.
Somebody else has a question in the back.
Yeah, so I had a question as a seasoned music professional. You have seen trends come and go, different music styles come and go, and I remember about 20 years ago, I had a little girl, and I was thinking, oh gee, it would be really cool if you take, something like Annie, which she was performing in, and put it to hip hop. And boom, about a year later, I heard it and I said, oh shit, I'm good at this. And I've predicted a couple of really weird things with ethnic music coming in with different things. And it has been really pissing me off because I always just think these things and then they happen. So now I'm trying to sit here and say, okay, right now I just really freaking know what's going to be next, and it bothers me. And I hear a couple things, I'm going, you know what? We're going into that corner where you just kind of get bored of it. Something's going to happen. Somebody's going to come up with that next really fun, weird, new thing, and it's going to catch on. So I want to ask you, you put your money on that wild card, if you just throw it out, what direction is it going to go? Tell me some weird hunch you have, like...
I do have a weird hunch about it.
Where's it going to go?
The weird hunch I have is not so weird. It's going to be something that combines hip-hop, EDM, and rock. Something contemporary. Because there are more guitars sold than ever now. So it tells me people are playing guitar. It's not gonna go back to Leonard Skinner, even though, I gotta tell you, I go back to New York a lot because I'm a New Yorker, and I get to work in New York, and I have a few artists in New York. And we'll sit somewhere, and a 20-year-old is programming Leonard Skinner and old rock, and they say, oh, dude, yeah, I'm in a band, and this is what we play, and they're still loving it. So, but I don't think that's going to come back, And then as my friend Jason Flom, who owns Lava Records, signed, what's the name of the group that sounds just like Zeppelin?
Greta Van Fleet.
Yeah. And he grew up with a little bit of Zeppelin. He's much younger than I am, but I think he felt like there was a need for something young, some young group that would introduce that. And maybe they did. The problem with me is so derivative. The licks are derivative. The voice is derivative. The drum sound is derivative. It's like, that's not very unique for me, But he's on the right track, I think. But I think, so when Linkin Park came in, they started kind of a trend, a blend, that's a blending. It usually takes some, like you said, some unique blend of something different that comes in and begins a bit of a trend. Because trends, everybody just follows the trend, if you had one Tracy Chapman years ago, everybody tried to find 20 Tracy Chapmans. I didn't understand that, but if you got one, that's great. Give me something else now. But that's what we do. That's what the industry has done for a long time.
Anybody else have a question? So I have a question for you. I mentioned that you're going to be involved in the Masters Workshop, but for many years you ran Songwriters Workshop at the Songwriters Hall of Fame in New York. And I'd love it if you would talk about that process, that collegial process of workshopping songs in a room on two levels. One, how do you help someone get better at their art while honoring who they are? And two, what do you see in a culture where people are rubbing shoulders? Like in this building, a lot of you work together to get better. But talk about that experience.
Well, that's a beautiful thing in itself. That a lot of people, help each other. My workshops for me, they became very precious after a while, and I became very possessive of my workshops because what I found was I started with maybe 10 people, a core group of people, and we always sat in a circle, kind of all looked at each other, and it became a little family. People would play a song, everybody had an opportunity to critique the song, and I offer my 2 cents, and week by week, they would try to improve the song, bring it back, or just give up and go to another song if it wasn't right. But the community aspect of it, this circular community, grew to 20 and 30 people at a time and stayed for 5-10 years at a time, the same group. And what it became like was like a little family. And everybody was there to help each other. Now, of course, there's always the petty jealousies when somebody does well and the other person has a song, and they think their song was better, or, it's just human nature that people get like that sometimes. But my job was to try to deflect that, and I enjoyed trying to deflect that and try to let them understand that if the 10 of them could sit and write together, today you got 10 people on a song anyway. What's the difference? Anybody walks in the room, delivery guy, hey, you're in. You got 2 words. It's anything. It'll work. I'm trying. We'll make it work. But the community aspect of it, everybody offers something different, Somebody's strength might be a lyrical strength, and they have a different perspective, and somebody brings in a song and they're struggling with a lyric, and that person goes, well, why don't we co-write and sit and, because I really think I have a different angle for your story, and that angle turns out to be the magic, and that's what I saw so many times, more than anything. I saw people happy with their results. And mind you, everybody comes to a workshop for something different. Like somebody will come in, 10 people come in and they'll say,
Yeah, okay. You ready?
Yeah.
Oh, man. Not your fault.
Broken chair.
Hang on 1 second. It's all good. You're okay with me?
Oh, yeah. No, fine.
It was like the weight of that awesome comment.
So, we cut it on camera, too.
Keep my mouth shut from now on. I don't give my mouth shut.
So sorry, okay? Everyone. We'll get you, let's just retire that one.
You're gonna write a song about that.
I just might.
Falling off a chair,
I'm gonna-
nobody's
don't-
falling
don't
off
be
a
right here.
cliff.
Yeah.
All the tough things in life. And that's your analogy, broken chair.
Everyone comes out with that song.
The fractured song. Now, relax.
We're family. Sorry.
So anyway, it's the communal aspect and the fact that people could help each other and construct and make something better and something that somebody's proud of, you know. And in the end, you basically, when you write, for me, writing is a muscle, but I think when you do write, you hit the core, where it's an honest song, where, you know, it hits the core of something inside of you, then I think what ends up happening is you're attached emotionally. And some songs you're not attached emotionally. Some songs you just try and imitate something and see if you can do that. It's an exercise. Other songs, there's this real emotional attachment. For artists who are writing for their own artistry, it's an emotional attachment. And if someone in the group is offering something that can help you, great. I think that's that's part of what these are structured to do. Some people come in, they ask for a comment on their vocals, which is more a production comment. Some people come in, I actually got, somebody sent me questions, I don't know if he's here or not, but
Is Nick here? I think so.
no, Nick's not here. But he sent me 3 questions. You know, people ask about production, they ask about the vocals, they ask what they should do.
How about one, since he has 3 questions about vocals, what's one vocal recording tip that you would offer?
Use your ears on vocals. I know, logical, right? But I'm not going to name the artist, but I work with an artist who's had many hit records, and she won the Grammys, and she was a friend, somebody I know from childhood as well. I knew her from my neighborhood. And she came in like a tempest in a teapot one night to the session, and she said, I want a FET, I want a Sony, I want but the FET's the one I'm going to use. We put up 4 mics, and we recorded her in little sections on each mic. And I said, you choose. Choose the one you like for your voice. It wasn't the FET. It wasn't the one she was so insistent on. It was actually the one that would be least likely. But when you're recording vocals, the mic, the room, where the person's standing, how their voice feels that night, the chain that it's going through, the outboard gear, everything is a factor. So when people say to me, you know, can I have a tip on vocals? I say, yeah, use your ears. Does it sound good to your ears? And one tip I'll always give, and people, everybody's different this way, when they record the vocals, don't put reverb on when you listen to it when you're singing. Because 90% of the time, if you don't have an incredible pitch, you're going to go off pitch and we're going to be melodyning you for hours. And people with great pitch go off with, people don't realize that the dimension of reverb, the more reverb you put on, the broader the signal, the wider the signal, but the more chance you have to not hear the tonality that's coming out of your voice. It just gives a sheen, but it doesn't help, you know. So, and I've worked with a lot of artists who have requested that, and then they listen back and they go, it's not right. Yeah. It's not. You gotta do it again. In the nicest way possible, you know. Patti LaBelle, who I love dearly, 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 and was always a big fan of. One day I was fortunate enough to make a record with her. And Patti has this thing where she needs to play with the knobs on her microphone, on her headphone patch, you know. So she blew out one set of headphones, blew out a second set of headphones. I don't know how. Just kept cranking knobs. And it doesn't sound right. It doesn't sound right in my ears. So I went in and I listened. We got it exactly the way she liked it. As soon as we got it the way we liked it, I put my arm around her and I put my hand on the headphone patch, and I just said, "Okay, Patty, sing." And that was it. She didn't touch it. It sounded great. And some people have knee-jerk reactions. Everybody has these little quirks in the studio that you have to acclimate to, and I'm sure I have my quirks. I mean, I know that I repeat certain phrases, like, and when I do interviews, and I'm listening back, I'm going, oh, shit, I said, like 15 times in 3 minutes, it's terrible, but, you just gotta keep working on stuff. That's it, just keep working.
That's great.
You get better, and eventually you get really good at this stuff, by the 90 or something, you come up there with the walker, and I didn't say once.
Does anyone else have a question? I have maybe one more, but yeah, go ahead.
So you said earlier that writing is a muscle, of course, and I've read this book, Daily Rituals for Artists. So it just got me thinking about, is there a daily ritual you do creatively, or exercise you do on a daily basis that keeps your creative juices flowing?
In the morning, the first thing I do in the morning is I'm shocked that I'm alive. And I just look up, and I'm very thankful for that. No,
Write that down.
thanks is the most important thing first in the morning. But I think for me, anyway, it's really important to take the first 20 minutes that you have of your day and try to do something that's important for you to set the tone for the day. All right. So I don't know if that's helping a creative muscle, but it certainly puts me in a different place. If I pick up the phone because I woke up late and I know that there's 7 things waiting for me, my day starts quite differently than if I wake up, stretch, do some yoga, even try to meditate, do some, thanks. I do wacky things. I go in the shower and do my thanks. I'm thanking God, thank you for my eyesight, my ears, whatever. It's just, my thing is that I need to acknowledge every day 5, 10 things that I'm grateful for, to understand that I'm lucky to be here and do what I do for 45 years. Not everybody's been lucky that way. I'm really blessed that way. So for me, that helps my creative energy. But it's really important for me to also write stuff down. As a writer, it's not what you write there. You don't have to write a song. You just have to get thoughts out. But when you meditate, thoughts come to your mind, and you learn in meditation that if you just let the thoughts go, whatever's supposed to stay, stays. In the beginning, when you're trying to meditate, it's difficult because everything comes flushing out at you, and it's really hard, and then all of a sudden you get this revelation when they just let it go, and the important things stay. So I try to, I have my own little rituals that are probably different than other people's, but. Question? Anybody else?
Is there any exercises that you do to always be able to hear your voice, to make sure you're always in key? When you're singing live, I think that's you sometimes just can't hear. It's just so much noise. Is there any exercises?
Kenny Loggins told me that, and he has really great pitch, and as the night goes on, his voice seems to get better. So he was telling me that he has a vocal exercise that he does, that he's had ever since the beginning, and it's tied in with this, just understanding where the notes sit, and understanding where your voice is against that note, because sometimes you're a little under, sometimes you're a little over. That's one exercise that I know works for some people, and just honing in on understanding what that pure note sounds like.
And feels like.
And feels like. So, this is fascinating. There's a drummer who's deaf, who, being a drummer myself, it was fascinating me to, but this is like one of the world's most noted percussionists who's in the classical field, and she just feels the vibration. So she's tuned in, that's what she's taught herself to do since she's deaf. She feels the vibration and understands whatever it is that goes through a certain way, then that has a certain tonality to it. And when you sing, it's just trying to hear that pure voice in your head. Really difficult in live settings, like you said. So if you've trained yourself to understand where that note is, you might, it might help you.
Anybody else? Yeah, in the back.
I'm always curious, I'm always curious because as an artist and a creative person, I've always found discipline being the hardest thing for me and everybody else to get, to learn. And I was wondering how you disciplined yourself as you're coming up. Some things you're practicing.
Well, passion, I was bananas passionately in love with just day in and day out listening to music and playing drums, listening to music, play drums. If there wasn't, I mean, when I was a kid, I wanted to be a baseball player, and I was really good. I wanted to be on the Yankees. So now I just watch the Yankees. And I'm trying to figure out how to incorporate music with them, which I'll do eventually, you know. But as a kid, I wasn't disciplined early on. It was just the passion that overcame me about the music that started me understanding that kind of a strange thing. I would listen to songs over and over and over and over every morning. As soon as I got up, put on a record, put it on, go and brush my teeth, come back, put the same record on again, come back, eat breakfast, put the record on again, over. My father and mother used to go crazy. It's just like, shut it off, this shit's driving me crazy, you know? Especially when it was John Coltrane or something, you know, Pharoah Sanders or something really out there that they couldn't relate to, you know? But it was something inside me that was compelled to hear this over and over and over, which really helped me as a producer and a publisher because you're playing the same songs over and over and over. You're listening in the studio 100, 150 times, same thing over and over, and still you got to be focused enough to critique it. But I've watched people who succeeded, and I never wanted to fail. I didn't think failure was an option. I always felt like, you know, no matter what's going on, there are people who are so much worse off than you are, and they're not failures. They don't consider themselves failures. So I just didn't want to fail in anything, and so I was kind of driven to repeat, play the pattern over and over and over again. And so it's just if discipline is something that you have an issue with, or you know, you're a little challenged with, I would say meditate. I'm not joking when I say that. I don't want to sound woo. No, I think, you know, we have to, today, you know, you have too much stimulus thrown at you today. Everything is in front of you like bam, 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 it's quick. Records spike quick, you know, you hear something, you think you're ahead of the loop, and you're behind the loop, it's up and gone. So, in order to focus, to really focus on something, you have to have a clear head. My father used to call it Cabo Fraiche, you know, Cabo Fraiche, you got a clear head, you know. That was a little different the way he was explaining the clear head from what I know. Clear head is, you know, you got to be able to focus on the one thing and do that really well. And then after you get that well, focus on another thing and do that well. And all of a sudden, and it's little victories. You know, petite victoire, they call it in French, right? The petite victoire. I don't know. That's what helps for me. And so meditation helped me because it cleared my head enough to focus on one thing.
Thank you.
Yeah, and don't forget, the root of that word is connected to disciple, which means about your love. It's for real, and it, you know, the work you put into it is that love made manifest. So you think of the things you love and how you honor them. It's different than I oughta, I shoulda. You know what I mean? If it starts there, that's the concentric circles that you work out from.
Yeah.
You know.
I mean, you have to love this. This is not an easy industry.
Yeah.
So the love affair has to be like so deep, you know, so deep that you're just willing to do whatever you need to do to feel that joy. This is a joyful process. So anybody that's not feeling joy has to rethink the way they look at the process. You have to feel joy with this. It's really joyful when you write a song, even when you come up with a great line that you just love and you go, oh, I can't believe I said that. I'm a moron, right? No, I mean, you know, you have to really enjoy the process a lot. You know, find the joy in it.
Yeah, amen. Oh, in the back. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, so I do have a couple of questions actually. Do you have any recommendations for this new generation of upcoming artists or any expectations?
Do I have any?
Recommendations and expectations.
Well, I just said meditate. Focus. We're going to put them all together. I mean, I say write from the heart. I know that a lot of people are trying to compete in a marketplace of what they see, and you know, They are listening to whatever the platforms they listen to, and they go, I want to write one like this, I want to write one like that. That's a great exercise, and it's really good to do, and maybe there's a need here and there. But I always say write from the heart. And by that I mean write something that you feel represents what you want to say at that moment. And you can change your tune every day, you know, it's just write another song. But my recommendation there is just make it be honest, you know, and for you, whatever that is, especially if you're an artist, definitely make it feel honest. But recommendations are, you just focus, surround yourself with great people, be really, choose wisely with the people you surround yourself with. Your first instinct is usually your best instinct, and a lot of us go past that because we want to give people the benefit of the doubt and all, but just keep your first instinct in the forefront, because the people you surround yourself with will tell you, well, first of all, you'll all lift each other's level on all levels of enjoyment, pleasure, intelligence, all that kind of stuff. But I think it's important who you surround yourself with, who you use as role models. A lot of people don't talk about mentors as role models today, and a lot of people don't have them. But we have so much research at our fingertips today. There's tons of examples of great people who've succeeded and who fought the odds a lot of times. And today, in a crowded industry, you're fighting odds, as always. And don't define your success by, this is something that I really believe to be true. If you don't, and I don't like to use the word don't, but if you can define your success by who you are and how you are with other people and how you treat other people and all that, rather than the fact that, I just bought a mansion and I just did this and that, you might feel better about the process, because this is all about a learning curve and a process, and it's all about enjoying the ride. You don't arrive anywhere magically. No matter what you win as an award, there's no magically, I won an award. Now what? I gotta win another one? It might drive you to do that, but I like to think that the people that I surround myself with, my friends, the people that I really love and who I enjoy being with, they define more about who I am and what I feel in life, and that's more of maybe it's an ethereal answer for, a songwriter who's looking for an answer about songwriting, but it's just life lessons, and you can use all those lessons and all the things you learn, channel it into your writing and make great songs, Just get better all the time, just look to improve all the time, practice.
I'm going to say, before we thank Bob for being here, I'm going to say, after we thank him, I'm going to let the C's part, let him get through the crowd in case he and Bonnie have to go. I'm not sure. And then I want to say one last thing at the end. But first, before you guys get up, stay where you are, but please help me thank Bob Cutarella.
Like a class.
And I just want to say finally,